My dad stood up and announced, "It's decided, and if someone disagrees, there's the door. Your sister gets your SUV and your house. She has kids." Everyone agreed. I confronted them, saying, "What about my kids? Are they not family? And if you give everything away, where will I go?" My mother came up to me and slapped me, saying, "How dare you talk back to your father? If you're that worried, we'll just throw a bed in the garage. You three can sleep on it." They laughed. My sister smirked. Finally, I won't have to do a thing anymore. Until I pulled out the folder and said, "Funny you should mention kids. Here's what she did with her last car." The chandelier light shimmered over 20 faces, each one smug, self-satisfied, or silently entertained. My father, Gerald, stood at the head of the long mahogany table like a judge about to pass sentence. "It's decided," he said again, that principal voice echoing through the room. The words hit like a blow. Beneath the table, my 7-year-old Nora gripped my hand. My 10-year-old Caleb stared wide-eyed, sensing the world tilt. Across from me, my sister Paige sat with her manicured nails tapping her wine glass. Her husband, Kellen, lounging like a man who had already won. Their children laughed in the living room, oblivious to the storm their parents had stirred. "What about my kids?" I asked again. "Are they not family? And if you give everything away, where do we go?" They meant my SUV, a 2022 Pilot I'd earned with double shifts and skipped meals, and my grandmother's house, left to me because I'd cared for her when no one else did. But compassion doesn't fit into ledgers. My mother Diane rose so fast her chair screeched, her hand flashed, cracking across my cheek. The room went silent, and then laughter burst like gunfire. "If you're so worried," she spat, "we'll throw a bed in the garage." Aunt Marcy wheezed with laughter. Uncle Wade nearly spilled his beer. Paige's grin widened like victory itself. "Finally," she said, "I won't have to do anything anymore." That's when I reached for my bag. The laughter quieted. They expected me to cry, to storm out. Instead, I set the thick manila folder on the table and opened it slowly. "Funny you should mention kids," I said. "Here's what Paige did with her last car." The photos spread like cards. Her silver Camry crumpled around a telephone pole. Uncle Wade adjusted his glasses. When was this? March 15th, 2022, 2 a.m. I slid the police report toward him. My father grabbed it first. Color drained from his face. Blood alcohol, 0.16. 3 counts child endangerment. The kids were in the car. None restrained. Tyler got a concussion. Maddie broke her arm. Connor had bruises. Paige's smirk died. Kellen stood so fast his chair toppled. "Where did you get this?" "Public records," I said. "Amazing what you can find if you look." But that was only the beginning. 3 thin folders landed next. Child Protective Services reports. "First," I said, 3-year-old Tyler found wandering at midnight in his underwear. Second, Maddie eating cat food because there was nothing else in the house. Third, Connor screaming for hours while Paige slept off wine and pills. Silence. Each time, CPS closed the file because my parents swooped in with lawyers and cash. My mother's lip trembled. "You had no right." I had every right to protect my children from being thrown out for her mistakes. I pulled the next set, bank statements highlighted in yellow. "Last October, you gave her $5,000 for home repairs. She bought 4 designer bags, a Vegas weekend, a Scottsdale spa trip, and $800 in wine. I know, because I saw the transactions myself." No one spoke. "She told you the money was for repairs," I continued, "and you believed her. You always do." Cousin Lila finally whispered, "Didn't she say she needed money for Tyler's sports injury?" $300, I said. "You gave her $2,000. The rest bought a new bedroom set and a deposit on Cancun." I spread one final sheet across the table. Over 5 years, they've given her about $220,000. The number hung in the air. When I asked for help, for braces, for car repairs, when Nora was sick, they told me to budget better. But for Paige, Every mistake was rewarded. My father's face collapsed. We were trying to help her get stable. No, I said. You were making sure she never had to be. Wade rose suddenly. Gerald, outside. Now, through the glass doors, I watched him gesturing wildly as truth tore through the denial. Inside, Aunt Marcy approached. Honey, why didn't you say something sooner? I did, I said. Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. Last Christmas, the DUI. Every time I spoke, you called me jealous. I lifted a photo from the pile. Tyler's blood-streaked face behind a shattered windshield. This isn't jealousy. It's danger. Nora tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can we go home now? Yes, sweetheart, I said. Home. The men came back in. Gerald looked gray. The house stays with you, he said quietly. And the car? It was never yours to give, I replied. Wade cleared his throat. I think we're done here. Family members filed out in stunned silence. Aunt Marcy hugged me. Lila whispered, If you ever need anything, call me. When the door clicked shut, the room felt like a battlefield. Empty wine glasses, crumbs, and lies scattered like shrapnel. Diane finally spoke. You've destroyed this family. No, I said calmly. I exposed what you were willing to destroy to keep pretending everything was fine. Paige needs stability. She needs accountability. And my children need a mother who will protect them, even from their own grandparents. I looked at Paige, still weeping into Kellen's shoulder. Get help, real help. Do it for them, not for sympathy. My father stared at the floor. What happens now? Now, I said, taking Nora's hand as Caleb stood beside me. We go home to our house in our car. You can decide what kind of family you want to be next. At the door, I paused. I spent years trying to be the daughter you'd approve of. Tonight, I remembered I don't need permission to be worthy. I already am. The porch light greeted us as we stepped into the night. Free. The drive home was quiet enough to hear the turn signal tick. Nora fell asleep with her thumb tucked under her cheek, the way she used to as a toddler. Caleb stared out at the passing streetlights, jaw clenched like he was holding the house up by himself. Mom, he said finally, not looking at me, are Grandma and Grandpa bad people? The question had edges. No, I said. They're people who made bad choices. We can love people and still protect ourselves from their choices. Is Aunt Paige going to jail? I hope she goes to help, I said. Sometimes help is the hardest thing. Our porch light glowed like a lighthouse. Home, our home, the one my grandmother had put into my hands on purpose. I carried Nora to bed, smoothed her hair, and kissed her forehead. Caleb changed into pajamas, then hugged me longer than usual. When both bedroom doors clicked shut, my legs gave out, and I sat on the rug in the hallway, palms pressed to the floorboards, feeling the quiet. My phone buzzed. Wade. Filed with CPS. Those kids deserve better. So do yours. Proud of you. Lila. Told Mom everything. She's calling too. This ends now. An unknown number lit the screen. Kellen. I'm taking the kids to my parents tonight. I can't be around Paige right now. Thank you for the courage I didn't have. I need copies of the documents. I kept telling myself she needed support, but I enabled her. I should have protected them better. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. Bridges were burning. Maybe that's what finally made a clearing. The phone rang again. Wade. I read Gerald the Riot Act, he said, skipping hello. Told him what his mother would say if she saw him trying to give away her house. Then I asked, if Paige had sat with your mother every Sunday for 10 years, would you have handed the deed to anyone else? He had no answer. Thank you, I said, for believing me, for looking at the facts, not the noise. Honey, you're the least dramatic person I know, Wade said. Your grandmother knew it too. That's why she made the will so tight a tornado couldn't pry it open. After we hung up, I made tea I didn't really want and opened a notebook. On paper, I emptied the night, betrayal, yes, but also relief so sharp it felt like oxygen. Morning brought 17 missed calls and a lattice of text bubbles. Distant relatives wanted details like it was television. I left them on read. The messages that mattered were simple. Wade, CPS confirmed intake. Lila, I can do school pickups this week if you want a breather. Kellen, filed for emergency custody. Lawyer says the case is strong. I'm sorry for sitting through those dinners when they treated you like you didn't matter. For the first time in months, the ground under my feet felt like ground. Things moved quickly. CPS opened a formal investigation into Paige's home, this time with multiple statements and documents instead of whispered excuses. My parents were told to step aside. No more handling it with envelopes and explanations. Paige entered a court-mandated treatment program. Kellen took the kids to his parents' house and signed up for the parenting course the court recommended. He texted photos. Tyler grinning over spaghetti he'd stirred himself. Maddie coloring a sun with too many rays. Connor asleep with a blanket crooked under his chin, a piece I hadn't seen on his face in years. With my parents, the air turned thin and formal. We exchanged logistics by text. They wanted to see Nora and Caleb. I agreed to supervised visits. Bright room, sign-in sheet, bad coffee, a wall clock that ticked loudly enough to count boundaries. 3 weeks after the dinner, they came to the first one. Diane's face looked smaller, like someone had turned the saturation down. She held 2 glossy gift bags like talismans. Gerald stood with his hands behind his back, posture of a man not used to being told no. Nora, look what Grandma brought, Diane sang, voice too bright, as if brightness could cross the space between us. Nora thanked her politely and poured plastic tea at the play kitchen. Caleb stayed beside me, shoulder solid against my arm. After the hour, Diane asked, "Can we talk?" 5 minutes. I didn't offer coffee. We stood in my foyer, careful not to touch the furniture with memory attached to it. "I'm seeing a therapist," she said. "Dr. Morrison. She recommended it." She looked at the floor. "When you and Paige were little, I had postpartum depression. Your father was working 80 hours. I felt like I was drowning, but I thought asking for help meant I'd failed. When Paige started to struggle, I recognized that panic. I threw money at it because I wished someone had thrown money at mine. Dr. Morrison says what she needed was accountability and structure, not cash. I thought I was saving her. I was making her worse. What about me? I asked, harder than I meant. When I was choosing between an alternator and the electric bill, when Nora was sick and I took unpaid leave, Diane's eyes filled. You were always capable, even when you were little. When your hamster died, you planned a funeral with construction paper flowers. When you broke your arm, you didn't cry. You told me calmly to drive to the ER. I thought you didn't need me. I needed you, I said, and the truth scraped clean. I just learned not to ask. Wanting and asking aren't the same. I needed parents I could fall toward. I'm sorry, she said. Not an excuse, not a performance, just the words. The visit stayed polite and stilted. Expensive toys don't bend gravity. After they left, Nora leaned into me on the couch. Why is Grandma sad? She asked. Because grown-ups sometimes hurt the people they love, I said. And when they finally see it, it hurts back. Are you going to forgive her? Maybe someday, I said. Forgiveness is a bridge you build from both sides. Boundaries are how you keep it from collapsing while you build. In the weeks that followed, Wade became a steady beat in our life. Bleachers at Caleb's games, front row at Nora's recital. On Saturdays, he turned up in a faded ball cap with a toolbox and taught Caleb to change a tire, while Nora blew bubbles that turned the yard into glass marbles of sky. He didn't replace a grandfather, he modeled one. Paige's updates arrived via attorneys and caseworkers, not late-night apologies. Good. I didn't have room for performances, only work counted now. One afternoon, a courier handed me a plain envelope. Inside, a letter, Paige's handwriting small and cramped. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, it read. I was willing to make your life smaller so mine could feel bigger. I told myself I was drowning and anyone in my way was a wave. That was a lie. I'm in AA 3 nights a week, therapy twice a week, parenting classes on Saturdays. I'm sober today. I want to be the mother my kids need, not the one who needs rescuing. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. There was no bargaining in it. No, if you forgive me, then just accountability, stitched to effort. I wrote back, keep going, accountability first. I'm not ready for closeness, but I hope you stay the course. For Tyler, for Maddie, for Connor. My hands didn't shake when I sealed the envelope. At night, after homework and dishes, I listened to the sound of our home becoming itself again. Caleb's sneakers thumping softly as he practiced layups against the bedroom door. Nora's laugh skipping down the hallway like a stone on water. The house felt steady, not perfect, not painless. Steady. One golden evening, Gerald called. "Can I drop off some gifts?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Doors aren't walls. They open if you turn the handle carefully." He arrived alone with a model rocket for Caleb and a craft kit for Nora. We stood on the steps like neighbors. He cleared his throat. "I don't have the words," he said finally, "but I'm trying to listen." "Then listen," I said, "to them, to your discomfort, to the truth you didn't want to see." He nodded, eyes rimmed red, and left the gifts like offerings. On the couch that night, Nora curled into my side. "Are we still a family?" she asked. "The best kind," I said. "The kind that loves you right." Outside, the roses shifted in a small wind. Inside, the floorboards didn't creak with fear. For the first time in a long time, our home felt like what it always was, ours. 6 months after that terrible dinner, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. It was from Paige, handwritten and shaky. She apologized, not with excuses, but with clarity. She wrote about denial, about numbing herself with alcohol and shopping, about realizing she'd nearly destroyed everyone who loved her. She said she was attending AA 3 nights a week, therapy twice, parenting classes on weekends. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I just want to be the kind of mother my kids deserve." There was no manipulation this time, no bargaining, only truth. I wrote back, "I'm glad you're getting help. Accountability is the first step toward healing. I'm not ready for a close relationship, but I hope you keep going. For Tyler, for Maddie, for Connor." For the first time, I sealed that envelope without shaking hands. Forgiveness wasn't here yet, but peace had started to grow roots. My parents' transformation came slower. Diane kept going to therapy. She sent small cards, birthdays, Easter, even National Nurses Week. Nothing grand, but heartfelt. Gerald called on Christmas Eve, voice uncertain, asking if he could drop off gifts for the kids. I said yes. It was awkward, full of pauses and long silences, but it was the first honest exchange we'd had in years. They never said, "I'm sorry." I've learned some people can't, not because they don't feel remorse, but because the words themselves make them face a reflection they can't bear. Nora and Caleb asked why we didn't see Grandma and Grandpa much anymore. I told them that sometimes grown-ups need space to learn to be better people. Caleb looked thoughtful. "Do you still love them?" "Yes," I said. "But loving someone doesn't mean you let them hurt you again. Real love has boundaries." He nodded slowly. "So love's complicated." "It is," I said, "but it's worth figuring out." A year later, Wade hosted a small family gathering at his house. Just him, Patricia, Aunt Marcy, her husband, cousin Lila, and our little family. No pretending, no judgment, just grilled burgers, laughter, and kids chasing fireflies. For the first time, family felt safe again. As the evening ended, Lila helped me clear plates. "You know, Riley," she said softly, "you did the right thing that night. You think you broke the family, but you actually fixed it. My mom's happier now. I'm setting boundaries I should have set years ago. You gave us permission to stop pretending her words hit hard. I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd been so focused on survival, I hadn't realized that truth could ripple outward, freeing others too. Later that night, after Nora and Caleb were asleep, I sat on the porch in my grandmother's old rocking chair. The summer air was thick with honeysuckle and memory. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. I stood up. It was messy and it hurt, but I did it, and we're okay. The wind rustled the maple leaves like a quiet applause. My SUV sat in the driveway, paid off now. The house behind me glowed soft with the kind of light that means safety. Inside, my children slept, loved, protected, and finally at peace. On my desk inside, one folder remained: evidence, statements, the truth that had saved us. I kept it not for revenge, but as a reminder. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept the unacceptable, even when it costs you. Months passed. Paige stayed sober. CPS closed the file with a note that her recovery was sustained and substantial. Kellen co-parented with her. The kids smiled in photos again. Diane started volunteering at a women's shelter. Gerald came to one of Caleb's baseball games and clapped until his hands were red. Little steps, but real ones. One evening, Nora and Caleb ran through the sprinklers in the yard, laughing, their joy echoing through the twilight. Freedom doesn't always arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it sounds like children laughing under a pink sky. I thought of that night around the table, the slap, the laughter, the silence that followed. And then I thought of this, our home, our peace, our laughter. I whispered to the stars, we're free because we were, not perfect, not rich, but finally, blessedly free. Sometimes I wonder if my parents think about Emma, if they regret their choices, if they've changed. Mostly, though, I don't think about them at all. They made their choices that day in the backyard. They chose cruelty over compassion, favoritism over fairness, image over love. I made my choice too. I chose Emma then and always, and I'd make that same choice 1,000 times over, no matter the cost. Years from now, when Emma is older and asks me about her grandparents, I'll tell her the truth. I'll tell her that sometimes people aren't capable of love, that sometimes family is the people who choose you, not the ones who share your blood. I'll tell her about Mrs. Patterson, about the nurses who cared for her, about all the good people who showed us kindness when we needed it most. But mostly, I'll tell her that she was worth fighting for, that she's always been worthy of love, protection, and devotion, that the failure was never hers, it was theirs. Emma will grow up knowing that her mother chose her, fought for her, never wavered in putting her first. That's the legacy I'm building, one day at a time, not of bitterness or revenge, but of fierce, protective love. And if my parents are somewhere out there regretting their choices, begging a universe that won't answer for a second chance they'll never receive, well, that's their burden to carry. Mine is much lighter and infinitely more precious. It's the weight of my daughter's hand in mine, the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hugs. It's the knowledge that I broke a cycle, that I chose differently, that Emma will never doubt her worth because I made sure she knew it. They wanted mercy. They got justice instead. And Emma and I, we got freedom.